How's it going, everyone? Matt, Leighton, Shawn Battle. Welcome back to another real estate video, guys. In today's video, we're going to be talking about why renting is not throwing money away. I feel like the internet gods are going to smite me for saying that.
They might. I'm not saying that. He is.
Yeah. Shawn's like, let me move a little bit further away. But guys, listen, we're going to go over about 5 to 6 things about why renting is not throwing your money away. And you may be thinking, why are 2 real estate agents, well, I don't know what side Shawn is going to be on, but why are 2 real estate agents talking about why don't they want our money? Don't they want to buy a property? So we're going to get into that. Shawn, how is your day going so far?
A little hectic, man. Video shoot, running around. I think we got some properties coming on the market, but we can't talk about them. Remember, we talked about that in a video not too long ago? Now that rule is implemented, I'm finding that I don't really like it because I want to tell people about my properties.
Well,
right?
I just told all of my Instagram followers about a new property I have coming on in Ballston. And so long as you don't know the exact property address, you can't decipher that. I said 2-bed, 2-bath in Ballston in a corner unit. You don't know what property that is. So as long as you're not giving out specifics, I think you're fine.
Yeah, well, on that note, I got a 2-bedroom, 2-bath coming up in Ballston.
Yeah.
670s. Good property.
Rhymes with the Schmontinental?
No, actually it doesn't. Actually, it rhymes with Hexington.
Hexington.
Where? Opposite of circle.
Yeah.
Something like that. Anyways.
So guys, listen. All right. Rent versus buy.
Yeah.
Every real estate agent in the world is going to tell you that now is a great time to buy. I love when Zillow and Trulia and Redfin come out with articles that say it's a great time to buy and like you should buy compared to rent. It's like, wow, a website that sells you houses is telling you should buy houses. So the first argument, and I hear so many comments on some of my videos about like, you're an idiot. Usually starts and stops there, but like, you're an idiot. Renting is, of course, throwing your money away. And then they have their arguments. So let's go through each one of those arguments. You can tell me what you think.
All right.
So the first argument, why are you going to pay someone else's mortgage when you could pay your own? You're literally, when you're renting, you are paying someone else's mortgage. Your money is going towards their mortgage. What are your thoughts on this argument?
I agree 100%. I was raised on that premise, right? I mean, that's kind of, maybe I'm brainwashed into thinking that I'm paying somebody else's rent if I'm renting. I believe it, and I actually have had rentals, and they did pay my mortgage. Yeah. So to give you an example, I had a 1-bedroom that I owned for a long time. I lived in it for a few years, then I rented it out, and I bought it at a time when it was the height of the market and the property value dropped, which, we can talk about that risk that you have. But at the same time, somebody was paying that mortgage down and paying it down and paying it down. So, my loss wasn't really a loss. And in the end, I was able to take that money out and put it towards something else. So they did pay my mortgage down.
Yeah,
significantly.
You're right. So when you're renting, you're paying someone else's mortgage. You're paying their bill. But when you buy a place, who are you paying? You're paying a mortgage. Who owns the property? The bank. You're still paying someone else. You're literally paying the bank. You're paying someone else. You don't own the property. The bank owns the property. It's the same thing. Who cares if you're paying the bank or if you're paying Shawn Battle? And in that specific example, you were losing money. That was a decreasing in value asset. So this argument of why pay someone else's mortgage, well, you're still paying someone else's mortgage. It's just an institution as compared to an individual.
Now, my situation is unique because the property value actually dropped, right? But what if the property value went up?
Okay, that's a different point.
So we'll talk about that later. Okay, so yes, in some instances, I think it is better to rent, right? But are you ever going to be able to know what is going to happen in the real estate market? And that's, you're definitely taking a risk of the values dropping.
Values, we're going to get to that point, but specifically on the argument of you're paying someone else's mortgage, I think there are better reasons to buy. Like, I'm not you should always rent. I think there are really good times to buy, but on the argument of you're paying someone else's mortgage, when you buy a place, you're still paying someone else's mortgage.
You are, but guess what's happening at that same time? When you're paying that mortgage, you're also paying principal, and that principal is dropping every time. So if you're paying $2,500 in rent and $1,000 or $2,000 a month is going $1,500, say, to principal, that your loan is then going down and down and down. So when you go to sell it, you have a lot more equity in that.
Great point. So clearly, what we're going to go through, it's not like they're not isolated, where it's like, oh, it's only this or only that.
It's not cut and dry, right? I mean,
I think that's the biggest, one of the biggest benefits is you're paying down that interest. Let's move on to the next point. And I'm hearing this maybe less and less. I don't even know if it's still a thing, but you can tell me if this is still a thing. Buying a house and owning a house and home ownership is the American dream. That's the dream. You have this feeling, you have the white picket fence, you have the golden retriever, and you own property in the United States of America. What do you think about the American dream?
I still think it's the American dream. However, I know that the real estate market has changed a lot, and you millennials have changed a lot, changed the business a lot. Maybe that dream is changing, There's different ways of looking at it. I think that, are you saying not to own a property at all or just the one you're living in, right? I mean, there's a couple different ways. I don't know. I have a family. I feel like I want to own the property that I'm in, and I want them to be secure, and no one's going to be booting me out anytime.
Well, that's a very good point, and I think, dude, I googled the American dream. There's a definition for the American. It's like 3 words. There's a definition, but I think you make a really good point about family and stability, and we'll get to that. But I think the American dream is a feeling, and people just have these feelings of I have to. Well, of course I need to buy a house. Well, of course, I just got a job. Well, of course I need to own a house. But, you're going to be putting a significant amount of money down. Where is that money best spent? Like, do you have a 401k? Like, have you maxed out your retirement for the year? Do you have 6 months emergency funds set up? Do you have other investments? So before you think about the American dream, why? Like, why do you need to buy a house? Like, before you buy, ask why.
Yeah, no, it's a valid point. I think that not everybody is suitable for purchasing a property and having the quote American dream. I mean, you could put your money elsewhere and have the American dream. If you have a set plan for retirement, then go for it, right? But what I wouldn't be able to understand if my parents were still paying rent, right? They're 77 years old, they own their property outright, they're still paying taxes. But could you imagine if my parents at 77 still had to dole out rent that has increased over these years? I think it would be a nightmare situation, especially if you haven't planned correctly, and a lot of the people in that age haven't planned correctly.
And you make a fantastic point, because someone commented, renting is absolutely throwing money away. And I said, oh, well, how do you figure? And she goes, I've been living in the same town for 30 years. I've never moved, and my money has gone nowhere. And I'm just thinking, okay, well, in that very specific example, yes, renting is throwing money away. It depends. If you're going to be in the same place for a very long time and you want the stability, well, then, of course, it makes sense to look into purchasing. I feel like for the American dream, owning a house is the 1960s American dream, where you have, the overworked lawyer and the house mom that kind of hates her life. I think it's a little bit of an antiquated saying. I don't really like the American dream, because the American dream shouldn't be an all-encompassing term for buying it's not, but it shouldn't be related to buying a house, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's changed a lot. Now the American dream is like social media. I want likes. That's the American dream, right? I don't know.
Why you gotta look at me?
I know,
like
I'm
that?
saying the same thing, but yeah, I think that, if you think about it, maybe it is a little antiquated. But I would say that if your plan is to stay in the same place, like I have a friend that moved here years ago, and he rented for like 15 years. And think about like Arlington or Alexandria in this area, what prices did in 15 years.
Yeah.
The guy could have bought something for $200,000 and sold it for $6. It was nuts. So you could have made $400,000 and just built this wealth. And that's where I think that the American dream is partly wealth, right? Building wealth. And part of building wealth, to me, is owning your own home.
Fair enough. Cool. Let's move on to the next one. The next point is, oh, well, you get a tax deduction.
You do.
You get a significant tax deduction. I think the question is, how much are we spending to get that tax deduction? Does it make sense to spend $1 to save 25 cents? You know what I mean? You're gonna shell out all this money, and then, oh, but there's a tax deduction, so you're all set. So in terms of the tax deduction, that's a good thing, but it shouldn't be the one and only reason. It shouldn't be the reason that you're buying property.
No, not at all. And that tax deduction actually came down to a mortgage of $750,000.
So what happens when the feds adjust the
They
tax
could adjust
deduction?
it again, and that could go away at some point.
Yeah.
Where I think it makes sense is if, like, you know, there's always scenarios or places in the United States where you could buy something and your rent, the rent is way above what you can buy it for. So owning makes sense, and so does that tax deduction, right? And where it also makes sense is even in this area, if you think about, you know, the prices have gone up now, and some of this has changed a lot. But if you think about how, like, when you buy a place and you're using that tax deduction, if you compare say you buy a 1-bedroom and it's $400,000 and your payment is $2,600, and you could probably get a $2,200 rental out of it. But what makes up that difference is your tax deduction at the end. So paying $2,600 in a mortgage might be like the equivalent of paying $2,200 in rent. You're still paying $2,600, but it's like renting for $2,200. So, you know, it could make sense to bring that whole thing to, hey, I'm not throwing my money away, I'm actually paying down this, and, you know, that tax deduction is definitely helping. And it helps, believe me. I mean, my accountant says, buy a house. I rented for a while in a transition, and he's like, you have to buy a house. That is a big write-off that you're missing out on. So
Interesting. He also told you to buy a car, right?
he did. First, he told me to lease one, so I leased it, and then he told me to buy one. It just depends because tax laws change all the time too. So you have to keep up on all of the laws. I mean, if you buy an SUV over 6,000 pounds, it's a good write-off. You know?
That is a good write-off.
So you just have to know and rely on the professionals for those kind of decisions.
What's he going to tell you to buy next year? A boat?
Yeah, a boat. I think a boat is a huge, great investment.
Put the home office on the boat, you get a tax deduction?
Hey, we could do that, right?
I love how real estate agents in New York City are like, oh, well, the state and local tax, there's now a limit, and that's why our market's going down. It's like, no, the market's going down because the Chinese aren't buying in New York City.
Yeah.
Like, that's why the market's going down.
Yeah.
All right, so next item is, if the rent is the same as the mortgage payment, you should just buy. And I see both sides of this because on the one hand, there is a large majority of the entire country where it just makes all the sense in the world to buy. Like, properties are $100,000, they're $200,000, there's a low mortgage payment. Even if you're only going to be there for 3 years, it makes a lot of sense. However, when people say if rent is the same as a mortgage, you should definitely buy, that's not the whole picture. Because we got to think about taxes, we need to think about insurance, we need to think about repairs and maintenance. An article came out on CNBC that said 63% of millennials, this is 2019, 63% of millennials regretted their home purchase. That is 2/3 almost. And that's a significant amount, and it came down to unexpected repairs. So when you see the rent is the same as the mortgage, what you're not seeing is the water heater breaking. You're not seeing the HVAC breaking. You're not seeing those property taxes. So I think an argument can be made that it does make sense to buy in those circumstances. But for the most important purchase and the largest transaction of your life, we need to fully understand all of those costs before we start throwing around these blanket statements.
Absolutely. I mean, there are so many costs that go in, especially owning a house. Condos, townhouses, a little bit different. A single family house, there are a ton of repairs. And I mean, I can attest to that because I've put so much money into my house over the last 5 years. And part of that was because I wanted to, but I mean, I did replace the roof. You're talking $12,000. HVAC system. So these things can break. So that's the importance of a home inspection. But, you know, if your rent is the same as your mortgage, it really depends on how long you're going to live there.
Right.
That's what it always comes down to. If you're nomadic, if you think you're going to be moving, if you like the idea of, hey, I'm living here today and I'm going to live here tomorrow, don't buy. It makes no sense, because in the end, you're going to have to pay to sell that property and you're going to lose. So if you're a long-termer and you're going to stay in that place for 8 to 10 years, I think it makes sense. If you're a short-termer, 2, 3, 4 years, probably doesn't. What a lot of people in this area, this is a very transitioning place. A lot of people come in and they leave. And I've seen people mostly win in this area. And, you know, of course, I'm grabbing the big examples, but I had somebody buy a condo off me, you know, $585 and sell it 2 years later for $650, right? $65,000 increase in value. It doesn't happen everywhere, but these are the things that you're missing out on. That could have totally changed and gone the other way, and they're completely lost, and then they have to do a short sale. So, you know, ownership is not for everybody. There is risks in it, and the risks can go either way. Either you're going to lose out on a big increase in value and a big wealth proposition, or you're going to lose a huge amount and have to short sell it. So you just never know.
Yeah, and I think with renting, you're paying for the convenience. You're paying for the responsibility-free living, and you're paying for the ability to relocate. Now, if you're going to be in a city for 7 years, it most likely will make sense to purchase in that city. And, you know, people always come to me asking about what neighborhoods are about to explode. Is this a good investment? The reality is you want to be buying for the right reasons. And usually that comes down to stability, growing a family, and the number one reason is just being happy, right? Just being happy with your life and where you're living. And can you come home and just enjoy living your life without looking at the Zillow Zestimate every second of the day and wondering if your property went up or down? Guys, if you're renting or if you're buying, are you happy? That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just like timing the market in the stock market. You can't time neighborhoods. I mean, when you do that, you end up losing anyways. So just go after an area or something that you have passion about, like Arlington or like a beach house or something like that. You know, if that's what your passion is and you love to be there and you love to live there, then buy something. If you're, you know, that type of person that's moving all the time, don't buy.
Yeah.
You know, rent. And rent is very convenient for a lot of people. And truthfully, the responsibility isn't there. So if you don't want the responsibility and the headache, then don't do it.
And I think the number one goal of this video and why Shawn and I came up with this video is people just throw out these sayings. Renting is a waste of money. Owning a home is the American dream. You know, you can do what you want with the property when you own it. Well, you know, why? Like, think about why renting is the American dream.
There you go.
Freudian
Maybe
slip.
it's changed.
Yeah. But just think about why. I mean, it's so easy to just say these sayings and then go about your day. But, you know, we're coming up on an election, and when it comes to presenting an argument, when it comes to presenting facts, I don't even like entering the arguments or having a video like this until I can argue for the other side. So we could do this video over and Shawn could be the one saying that, you know, renting is the best thing since sliced bread, and I could be countering him.
We could all make arguments for either side.
But the goal here is to understand the other side's argument as opposed to just blatantly going about your life as if there's only one singular answer, when in fact there could be, I mean, people, they move towns every single year.
Yeah.
You just would lose so much money if you kept buying real estate and then having to sell it. So,
absolutely. No, I agree with you.
Well, let us know. Hopefully you haven't downvoted this video just yet. When I put it on YouTube, I'm just going to say, please don't downvote in the title.
Yeah.
And let us know if you do in fact think renting is a waste of money. Shawn and I obviously make a living off helping people buy and sell properties. So clearly we see the value. Shawn's in the market to buy a house in North Arlington, if you know anyone. I am going to be in the market very soon to buy a condo in Roslyn. So we both see the value of both owning and renting. But let us know your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. And for Shawn and myself, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Take care.